I'm Aaron, 35. I own a small auto repair shop 2 blocks from the kind of diner where grease is a seasoning. My life has a rhythm: busted transmissions, coffee black enough to strip paint, weekend rides on my bike, steady work, steady hands, steady enough man, or so I thought. My wife, Sophie, is 34, polished, manicures that never smell like engine oil, heels sharp enough to remind me that steel isn't the only thing that cuts. We were good once, comfortable. She liked saying, "You fix cars, I fix people," back when she worked in marketing and still believed meetings were therapy. These days, she doesn't fix much of anything, least of all us. The first warning light blinked on a Wednesday. Long day at the shop, oil stains on my jeans, a crankshaft that refused to crank. I came home thinking, maybe she just needs a reminder. Not roses, not a vacation, just a little effort, something human. I cleared the table, lit a couple candles I'd dug out of a drawer, brewed her favorite tea instead of my usual whatever's left in the pot coffee. Even put on that old record we'd played in the first years, before life turned into a calendar full of appointments nobody wanted to keep. The dog planted himself under the table like he knew I was about to make a mistake. Sophie came in, coat over her arm, smelling like a perfume I hadn't bought and couldn't name. She glanced at the candles the way a mechanic glances at duct tape on a brake line. Half pity, half disbelief. "Oh, candles?" she said, kicking off her heels. "What's the occasion?" "Nothing," I said. "Just thought we could use a night. You, me. Tea." She hummed, dropped her earrings on the dresser with the finality of a gavel, and didn't sit down. I touched her shoulder, light, cautious, as if I were tightening a bolt that might shear off. "I wanted a quiet night," I said. She didn't look at me, just exhaled and tossed back, casual as throwing a rag on the floor. "I'm tired. Marital obligations can wait." Then she slipped into the bedroom, leaving the candles to burn on the table like 2 forgotten centuries. That was attempt 1. Attempt 2 came Friday. I grilled chicken on the patio, because men in commercials always grill their way back into their wives' hearts. She poured the wine, smiled just enough to register, and we ate in silence. Afterward, I brushed her arm. "Headache," she said, fingers pressing her temple like she was swatting away a fly. I got her water, because that's what decent guys do, offer hydration instead of protest. She sipped, scrolled on her phone, face glowing blue while I stared at the ceiling, wondering when she'd stopped laughing at my bad jokes. Attempt 3 was Sunday night. I nudged her foot. "Upstairs?" I asked, trying to sound casual, not needy. "I've got to be up early," she said, already pulling a blanket over herself like she was covering unused furniture. It was Sunday. Monday mornings had never stopped us before. And somewhere between those 3 weak refusals, the dashboard lit up with smaller warning lights. New lipstick, leaving coral marks on coffee mugs I'd washed 1,000 times. A sharp navy blazer with shoulders that made her look like she was auditioning for a different life. Phone locked tighter than a vault, first with a new code, then with Face ID, as if our marriage required biometric clearance. I didn't keep score on paper, but the tally sat heavy in my head. Cars don't break all at once. They warn you. A knock here, a leak there. Ignore it long enough and one morning the engine won't turn over. I was starting to wonder if our engine was already dead, and I was just pretending to hear it hum. By Thursday, she'd started taking calls in the hallway. Light, floaty, the kind of voice she used with waiters when she wanted to sound charming. I'd stand in the kitchen, wiping a clean wrench just to give my hands a job, while her laughter leaked under the door like exhaust fumes. "Who was that?" I asked once, eyes on the sink, pretending I cared more about water spots than her answer. "Work," she said, quick, like downshifting to avoid a question. I nodded, dried the wrench that wasn't wet, and stacked it in the drawer with the rest. Attempt 4 wasn't even an attempt, just my hand on her back while she brushed her teeth. She caught my eyes in the mirror, waiting for a question that didn't come. Later in bed, she rolled away and said into the dark, almost playfully, "Finally, you're learning." Learning what, exactly? To want less? To sit quiet like an unused jack in the trunk? I lay awake, counting the silences instead of the chances. The next morning, she hummed to herself while searching for her keys, like someone rehearsing cheerfulness for an audience that wasn't there. "Busy day," she said, kissing the air near my cheek instead of me. "Me too," I answered. We walked to the door together. She stopped to check her reflection, adjusting her blazer like it was armor. The dog sighed when we both left, as if he knew one of us wasn't really coming back. At the shop later, I swapped out a faulty alternator on a Dodge and thought, at least this problem has bolts I can see. The invitation came from one of Sophie's co-workers, some marketing birthday thing. "We should go," she said. Her voice already had the cadence of someone who'd made the decision without me. "Great," I said, the way you say great when the brakes squeal but still technically work. She prepared like it was a coronation. Long shower, hair dried in layers, foundation smoothed until her face looked airbrushed. I leaned in the doorway of our bedroom, arms crossed, watching her clip on gold hoops with the precision of a surgeon. "You look good," I said. "I know," she replied, not looking up from the mirror. By the time we walked into the bar, I was just an accessory, her +1 in worn leather boots, the kind of guy you drag along so people know you're not technically alone. Sophie laughed like she'd been saving it up all week, the kind of laughter that turns heads. She leaned in at stories she'd heard before, let her hand rest a second too long on a co-worker's arm, nodded like the night was designed solely for her. I stood by the bar nursing a beer I didn't want. One guy hugged her, called her kiddo. Kiddo. She's 34, not waiting for prom. I bit my tongue until it tasted like copper. The whole scene felt like sitting in someone else's living room. My wife was animated, radiant, alive, and none of it pointed in my direction. If marriages were songs, ours was out of tune. We left early. On the drive back, she rolled down the window, letting the cold air slap the gin out of her cheeks. I glanced sideways at her profile, sharp under the streetlights, and thought how much she looked like someone auditioning for a role she'd already won. Back home, I reached for her cautiously, like a man moving a fragile part from one shelf to another. "Not tonight," she said, voice soft, final. That tonight mattered more than she knew. It sounded like a clause in a contract with invisible fine print. After that night, the warning lights multiplied. She started leaving earlier than traffic required, coming home later than any meeting should last. Her heels clicked across the hardwood like punctuation marks. Perfume lingered in the hallway long after she was gone. Not the scent I knew, but something brighter, hungrier. She took her phone into the bathroom, fan on, door locked. Showers longer than showers need to be. Conversations blurred into the hum of the vent. One evening I walked past the sink and noticed a new lipstick haloing the rim of her coffee mug. Coral. I raised it like evidence. "New color?" I asked. She didn't flinch. "Gift bag from work." I nodded. I've seen enough gift bags to know they usually contain pens, stress balls, and company slogans, not high-end lipstick. But sure, let's call it swag. At the shop the next morning, while swapping out brake pads on a Honda, I caught myself tightening bolts harder than necessary. The car was honest. It squeaked, I fixed it. If only Sophie came with a torque specification. The photo arrived a week later, a text from a buddy who worked downtown. Not a close friend, just the kind of guy who knows when to keep his mouth shut. Might be nothing. Thought you'd want a heads up. Attached, Sophie, 3/4 profile, sitting at a patio table across from a man with a trimmed beard and baseball cap. Elbow hooked over the chair like he'd been there before. Luke. Not a stranger, not even a surprise. Just a name from Sophie's 20s that had hovered in the background of old stories. Wrong timing and different lives. A chapter she'd supposedly closed. I stared at the photo until the pixels broke apart. Her knee angled toward him, his thumb on the rim of her glass. The small crease by her eye when she was listening like the world had vanished. Not a kiss, not a caress, just familiarity that didn't grow in a week. The kind of familiarity that doesn't die when you promise it did. I put my phone face down on the workbench, wiped my hands on a rag, and listened to the air compressor kick on. Machines, at least, don't lie about where the pressure is. That night at home, Sophie was cheerful. Almost too cheerful. She poured wine heavy, talked about deadlines and clueless clients. I boiled pasta, nodded, pretended we were still in the same play. She didn't notice me watching her too closely, like I was waiting for a loose bolt to roll into view. After dinner, I set my glass down carefully, the way you set down a decision. "Is there someone else?" I asked. She laughed, quick, high, brittle. "You sound insecure." I didn't smile. I looked at her like I look at a cracked gasket, patiently, waiting to see if the leak reveals itself. "Is there someone else?" I repeated. She took an exaggerated breath. "We're adults, Aaron. This jealousy is exhausting." I sipped water, listened to the refrigerator hum. When it clicked off, I asked the only question that mattered. "How's Luke?" Her fork stopped halfway. Her jaw tensed, then released. Eyes flicked left, right, like the room had shifted an inch. No words, but the truth spilled out anyway, written in every micro-expression her body betrayed. And that was enough. Silence has different weights. There's the silence of a motor cooling down, steady and harmless. And then there's the silence that follows a question answered without words. That's the silence Sophie and I sat in after I said Luke's name. She recovered first, swirling her wine like the glass had insulted her. "You're overreacting," she said, aiming for nonchalance and missing. "Sure," I said, setting my fork down. "That's what guys do when their wives grab drinks with old boyfriends. We overreact." She opened her mouth, closed it again. I recognized the look. It's the same look customers get when they know their engine's shot, but they're praying for a cheaper fix. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, listening to her breathe evenly beside me, or pretending to. I thought about the photo, the angle of her body toward Luke, the smile that hadn't belonged to me in months. The next morning, I didn't ask about her plans. I just made mine. I opened a new bank account during lunch. No ceremony, just a signature, a deposit, a new card that didn't have her name embossed on it. On my break, I called a realtor about a small rental across town. Nothing fancy. 1 bedroom, enough space for me and the dog. Neutral walls, a garage where I could keep my tools. I didn't need square footage. I needed oxygen. By Friday, I'd closed our joint credit card, froze another, pulled up spreadsheets not for invoices but for freedom, step by step like dismantling an engine block. Remove, clean, separate, label. No anger, no speeches, just procedure. At night, Sophie was full of commentary. "You've been quiet lately," she said, glass of wine in hand. "Yeah," I said. "Thinking." "About what?" "Logistics." She rolled her eyes. "God, you and your logistics." I didn't correct her. No point explaining that I wasn't thinking about carburetors. I was thinking about how to walk out without looking back. On Saturday, she tried nostalgia, pulled out an old photo album, set it between us on the couch. "Remember this trip?" she asked, finger tracing a younger version of us grinning by a lake. I looked at it. I remembered the cheap beer, the rented canoe, how she'd stolen my hoodie when the wind picked up. I remembered the way she laughed back then, sharp and unguarded. "I remember," I said. She studied me, searching for softness, but I didn't hand it over. Later, in bed, she whispered, "I miss us." "Yeah," I said. "Me too. Shame you found Luke to fill in." She inhaled sharply, turned away. I didn't pursue. The silence filled the room again, heavy but honest this time. Sunday evening, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. The text, "We should talk." Man to man. Luke. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Then I deleted it. If he wanted to fight, he'd have to shadowbox. Sophie noticed my mood. "Everything okay?" she asked, feigning innocence so hard it almost sounded like guilt. Perfect, I said, rinsing a glass. Everything's running smoothly. That was the last weekend I spent pretending. Engines tell you when something's wrong, they squeak, stall, or just refuse to start. People, they can smile, sip coffee, and lie through their teeth while saying everything's fine. That was the gap between my work in the garage and my life at home. It was a Tuesday when Luke showed up. I was elbow deep in the hood of a '97 Silverado, coaxing a stubborn alternator to behave, when I caught the sound of footsteps on the concrete. Heavy, deliberate, like someone rehearsing confidence. I straightened, wiped my hands on a rag, and there he was, baseball cap, trimmed beard, that brand of casual jacket men wear when they want to look like they've just rolled out of bed, but also like they've been on a magazine cover. "Morning," he said, nodding at the Chevy. "Think this old thing could use an oil change." I eyed the truck behind him. Clean. Not showroom clean, but clean enough to tell me he wasn't here for maintenance. I leaned against the fender and squinted. "Funny place to get an oil change," I said. "There are 3 quick lube shops within 5 blocks. They do it for $40 and a free air freshener." Luke smiled, an easy, practiced grin, the kind you wear when you're about to sell something you don't believe in. "Yeah, but none of them come with a chance to talk." He stepped closer, lowered his voice like we were co-conspirators. "Look, man, don't get the wrong idea. Sophie and I, it's not what you think. We hang out sometimes, grab drinks, that's it. She vents, I listen. Nothing official, I don't do official." I studied him, the way you study a customer insisting that the knock in their engine will just go away on its own. His tone was too calm, too casual, the kind of casual that takes practice. "So, you're telling me," I said slowly, "that my wife is risking a marriage for casual drinks?" Luke shrugged, weightless, like we were talking about weather instead of vows. "That's her choice, not mine. I'm not asking for anything, she knows that. I like nights, not paperwork. Don't shoot the messenger." He smirked, like the honesty was supposed to buy him absolution. I bent down, tightened the last bolt on the alternator, let the ratchet click 3 times just to underline the silence between us. Then I straightened and met his eyes. "Good to know," I said flatly. "Saves me time thinking she left me for something real." For the first time, his grin faltered. Not much, just enough for the mask to slip a millimeter. He shoved his hands in his jacket pockets, muttered something about not wanting drama, and turned toward the door. I didn't stop him. I didn't threaten him. I just watched him go, his sneakers squeaking faintly on the shop floor, leaving nothing behind but the faint smell of cheap cologne and the echo of his confession. He wasn't even interested in her future, only her present. The Chevy's engine turned over smoothly when I twisted the key. Honest, steady, alive. Machines may break, but at least they never waste your time pretending. That evening, the house smelled like her new perfume. Strong, deliberate, the kind that tries too hard to be noticed. Sophie was in the kitchen, phone on the counter, glass of wine already halfway down. She looked up, smiled, and said, "You're home early." "Luke stopped by the shop today," I said, her face drained and refilled in 1 second flat. "What?" "Brought his truck in," I lied, just enough truth to make it sting. "Said he wanted to talk." She set her glass down too hard, the clink sharper than she meant. "What did he say?" I dried my hands on a rag, calm as I could manage. "That you two grab drinks sometimes. That you vent, he listens. Nothing official. He doesn't do official." Her eyes widened, and then something complicated flickered through them. Shock first, because she didn't expect me to know. Then attention, like she'd been holding her breath for months. And finally, a release. Relief almost. He hadn't exposed anything more than casual drinks. But the relief soured quickly. She realized what his words meant. That she wasn't his grand passion. She was just convenience. Sophie straightened, reached for her wine, covered the tremor in her fingers with a long sip. "So, what? You believe him over me now?" I shrugged. Didn't have to believe anyone. The man was honest enough, more honest than you've been. Her jaw tightened. Aaron, you're twisting this. He's a friend, that's all. I leaned against the counter, watching her pretend calm. Friends don't look at each other the way you two did in that photo. And if he's your version of a friend, then congratulations. You've got one. Keep him. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again, softer. I didn't want it to get this far. Neither did I said. But here we are. The next night, I didn't cook, didn't light candles, didn't play our old records. I walked into the living room with a plain manila folder in my hands. Sophie sat curled on the couch, scrolling her phone, legs folded neatly like the picture of domestic calm. She glanced up, expecting small talk. Instead, I set the folder on the coffee table. What's this? She asked, fingers already reaching. Papers, I said. Divorce. Sign them when you're ready. Her face froze, the way an engine seizes mid-turn. She blinked, opened the folder, scanned the first page. You can't be serious. I've never been clearer? She looked at me then, really looked, searching for some crack, some plea, some invitation to negotiate, but all she found was the same flat steadiness I gave customers when I told them their transmission was gone, and no amount of praying would bring it back. You don't want to talk about this? She tried. No, I said. I'm done talking. I don't want to play in your show anymore. Keep the stage, keep the audience. I'll find a quieter room. The dog padded in and sat by my feet, as if casting his vote. Sophie's eyes flicked to him, then back to me, and for once she didn't have a line ready. I left the papers where they lay, a neat stack of endings waiting for her signature. I didn't pack much. A few changes of clothes, my tools, the old leather jacket Sophie used to hate because it smelled like gasoline and stubbornness. The dog watched from the doorway, ears tilted, as if waiting to see if this was another short trip or the real thing. It's just you and me now, buddy, I said, scratching behind his ear. His tail thumped twice, approval stamped and delivered. I left the rest. Furniture, dishes, the carefully curated life Sophie built to look polished for anyone watching. Let her keep the stage props. I wanted clean space. The rental was small, plain but honest. A single-car garage out back, a kitchen that smelled faintly of someone else's burnt toast, and a silence that didn't accuse me of anything. I carried in the last box, set it down, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. The paperwork came on a Thursday, neutral office, beige walls, a desk that looked allergic to personality. Sophie arrived late again, heels clicking like excuses. She sat across from me, folder already open, her pen poised but shaking slightly. Her hair was perfect, makeup intact, but her hands betrayed her. "Are we really doing this?" she asked, voice thinner than usual. I leaned back in my chair, calm as a man waiting for oil to drain. "We already did. This is just paperwork." She glanced at the first page, lips pressing together. "It feels final." "It is." Her eyes darted to mine, searching for a plea, a crack, something. She found nothing but stillness. With a shallow breath, she signed. The pen squeaked faintly on the paper, a noise louder than any argument we'd ever had. When it was my turn, I signed clean, firm strokes. No hesitation. The lawyer collected the pages, stacked them neatly, and said words about next steps that meant nothing to me. Sophie kept staring at the table, as if the wood grain might rewrite the story if she stared hard enough. I stood, pushed my chair in, and slid my house key across the table. My ring followed, cold metal against smooth wood. "That's it?" she whispered. "That's it," I said. "Good luck, Sophie." I didn't wait for her reply. Outside, the air was sharp, honest. My bike was parked by the curb, chrome catching the afternoon sun. The dog sat in the sidecar, tongue lolling like he'd been waiting for this ride his whole life. I pulled on the jacket she used to complain about, kicked the engine alive, and felt the vibration steady under me. No lies, no pretense, just fuel, fire, and forward motion. As I rode off, wind cutting clean lines around me, I realized something simple. I'd spent months trying to fix what was never mine to repair. Cars, I can rebuild. People, I can't. But myself, I just did. Life didn't end at that office table. It just shifted lanes. I kept the garage, expanded hours, even hired another mechanic to handle overflow. Word got around that I wasn't just good with engines, I was steady. Customers like steady. Steady fixes cars. Steady doesn't vanish in the middle of the night with excuses about needing space. Weekends, I rode more. Took the dog out on long stretches of highway until the horizon stopped looking like a wall and started looking like an invitation. I slept better, ate better, laughed more. The real kind, not the rehearsed chuckle I'd perfected for Sophie. And Sophie. Well, the curtain dropped fast. Luke never wanted a co-star. He wanted convenience, drinks, nights, nothing that came with paperwork or expectations. When she leaned in too close to claim more, he leaned back. When she asked where it was going, he said it was already there. 2 months after the divorce, a mutual friend let it slip. Luke had moved on, which is polite for ghosted. Sophie had bet the house on a man who never even sat at the table. She texted me once, "I miss how safe you made me feel." I read it, set the phone down, and went back to rebuilding a carburetor. Because here's the thing, engines don't lie, but neither do ex-husbands who finally stopped caring. And me? I wasn't a safety net anymore. I was free. If you felt this story hit hard, drop a like, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps Steelheart beating.